Ah, yes. A new predecessor tier list. Join me today as I break down my thoughts, my opinions, and what I've seen from the current state of the game after the big GRIM buffs. So, without any further ado, let's just jump right on with GRIM. Now, before I believe I had him in F tier, as he was pretty bad. The old adage goes, is your refrigerator running? And he was not running very well. But then what did they do? They done buffed up his move speed and now he's running. That's right, I think Grim is pretty good now. He's fine. He's maybe around the B or the C tier. They gave him more damage, lower cooldowns, more speed, more health, more armor. You can use your ult in the air. I mean, they really hit him with every buff in the book. And I think now he's a solid carry if you're looking for something a little wonky. He's definitely on the up and up in the world. Another character I find on the up and up is going to be that Iggy and Scorch. Now I do think Iggy and Scorch is better, don't get me wrong. However, I still don't think he's crawling his way out of the D tier just yet. Yes, he's more annoying. Yes, he's more prevalent in your games, but at the end of the day, he is still kind of a free kill to any jungler worth their salt. If you want to gank that Iggy, you can usually gank him and spank him and put him in the dirt. So while Iggy, is moving up a little bit in the world, I still think he's pretty bad. Another character that was buffed up is going to be the Morgesh, but unfortunately she's still absolutely crumbs. Now Morgesh is really only good if nobody knows what they're doing in that game, but these days, people have had some time to practice, test things out, and overall Morgesh just isn't really bringing enough to the table when compared to other mages. She doesn't really have the big circle damage abilities. She doesn't really have good mobility. She doesn't have the best survivability. She doesn't really have good wave clear. She's kind of easy to gank. She's kind of easy to kill. And in a team fight, I find that she often just does not provide the necessary value that you want out of your mid laner. Next up on characters that have been changed is going to be the Chimera. Now, Chimera was just the best jungler for a while, but, he's been nerfed quite an extensive amount through these days and weeks, and I'm leaning towards dropping him down a peg into the A tier. That being said, he can still do the Fangtooth incredibly early. 5 minutes rolls around and he can snag that tooth. His ganks early game are still immaculate. And all in all, he is still the Chimera you know and love. Just a smidge dropped down, which may put him down into the A tier, although I could still move him back up into S. I'm not 100% sure yet, but he's still very good, don't get me wrong. Next up on the docket, we do have the Gideon. Now, they've nerfed Gideon a good bit, but I still think he's definitely one of the best mages in the mid lane. He's nearly impossible to gank. A lot of times in the jungle, I find myself just saying, it's not even worth it to gank that Gideon. He's just going to teleport away. So he has incredible safety. Big fat circle abilities that just do honkin' damage. And his ultimate, while nerfed, still is just incredible in a team fight. And still does a lot of damage in its own right. The Fae has been buffed up a little bit, but she's still hot garbage, dog water, absolutely trash character. I would rather a Morgesh on my team than a Fae. I just never see the Fae doing well. It's often a free kill in my eyes. I'm like, oh, they have a Fae? That's a free kill. What is she gonna do? Poke me for 5 damage? Oh no. There's a cleanse active that the supports get, that the hunters get, the carries get, that just really shuts down her ultimate, and I'm gonna be honest, the only good thing about Fae is her ultimate, which is just easily countered by prevalent items in the meta. So she's still going to be stinky doo-doo, hot dog water, bottom of the list. Next up, we got Xeris. Now, Xeris was nerfed a good bit. I had him pretty high before, maybe in the S or the A. These nerfs, I think, bring him down a little bit more in line with the Chimera and the Gideon, where he's still just a very dominant force. If you get caught in that Colosseum and you're playing, I don't know, a Grim, a Iggy, a Morgesh, a Fae, you're just going to die. He still has an incredible gank with his ult, good utility with his stun, his dash, his spear throw, and all in all, I find Xeris to be doing quite well in my games. Next up, who has been buffed up in the patch, is going to be the Revenant. However, I still think Revenant still kind of suffers from the same things he suffered from before. He really just doesn't have mobility and kind of, I find, loses a lot of duels against the other carries. Unless you're just really nice on Revenant and you're hitting all your shots, I tend to see the other carries just performing, all in all, much better and at a higher level than the Revenant. So he's still going to belong in the F tier for me. Next up is Argus, who was nerfed a good bit, but they're just not nerfing what they have to nerf. It's not really his damage that makes him so OP. It's his stun. It's his slow. It's his tether slow. It's his slow on his ultimate. All of that combined just creates for an overpowered monster. If you get off an Argus stun in a team fight and throw that crystal down, they're just cooked. You're not coming back from that fight if you get hit with an Argus stun. Kind of is just a death sentence. And for those reasons, Argus is still going to be, in my opinion, an S tier hero. Next up on the S tier, everybody's least favorite support to go against, Lieutenant Bellica. Now, I actually think Bellica might even be better than Argus. The amount of zoning that her mana drone can do, she can really just take a lot of space and make you respect her, or else she's going to hit you with that seismic assault and just launch you up into the air. And while you're free falling through the air, you're wondering in your mind, where did I go wrong? And then you're dead with a lock-on, unmissable ultimate. Bellica just provides too much utility, too much damage, and all in all is just an absolute menace in the games. Bellica players rejoice. She is still at the top of the list. Next up, looking through the list here, I'm going to put Rampage. I think Rampage, in the current state, might just be the best jungler. Now, he's not the easiest jungler, not the simplest jungler, but I think he just jungles a little more than the other junglers do. He's got great wave clear, great sustain in the jungle with his passive, keeping him topped up on health and mana. His ultimate is just so powerful when utilized correctly. The way you want to use a Rampage ult is pop your ult, leap into the enemy mid laner's tower, smack him with a rock, and tank like 4 or 5 tower shots and kill them, and then waddle on out safely. that just has such little counterplay against it, that it offers such a fire amount of value, and can really put you in the dirt, that I have to acknowledge the Rampage being S tier. Not everyone's going to be able to pull this one off, but when they do, you will feel his wrath in the jungle. Next up in the S tier, everybody's favorite offlaner slash jungler, Quang. Now, what makes Quang so good, you may ask? Well, it comes down to one thing, really, and that's that he can't be beat in the offlane. He simply does just win against every other character when put up in the offlane in a fight. He has great lockdown with his tether, great safety with his shield and his ultimate being able to teleport to his sword. He has a dash. He has damage, tankiness, movement, CC, survivability. He has it all. All in all, Quang is still at the top of the meta in my opinion, and in my eyes, still the best offlaner. And last but not least, in the S tier, I am going to put the Wraith. Now here's the thing about Wraith. Not everyone's going to be able to make him look S tier. But if you're against a Wraith that is decent, or dare I even say good, the S tier is where he belongs. He has incredible range and damage with his snipe. Very hard to lock down if you're warding properly on Wraith. He can still rewind someone back in time, which in a late game engagement can often mean certain death. He's hard to lock down with his stealth and his wards, relatively safe for having no mobility, and the amount of range, poke, and annoyance he can provide just puts him right up there in the S tier for me. These are going to be, in my opinion, the top 5 characters, the best in their respective roles, the best jungler, the best offlaner, the best mid laner, the best support, and the best carry. These I find to be just overwhelming forces to deal with. Sure, you'll find the people that are playing them bad, and you're like, oh, this guy sucks. But then you run against the guy playing them good, and you're like, well, there's just nothing I can do here. I guess I'm just beat this game. These are going to be your top dogs, who you want to look to play, and if you've got some time to put into a character, I would lean towards some of these. Alright, so let's keep on moving through the tier list here, and move on to Drongo. Now, I think if you don't quite have the pure raw gaming prowess to pull off the Wraith, then you're better off sticking with the Drongo. Drongo provides incredible utility with his Silence Grenade. A Gideon's coming in to ult you, Silence Grenade. A Quang's coming in to fight you, Silence Grenade. Oh, what's that? Xeris wants to use his ult on you? Silence Grenade. It just provides so much value. He's relatively safe with his ultimate being able to jump away. He's got a good slow. He wins a lot of the Hunter 1v1s, the carry 1v1s. And all in all, Drongo seems to be doing quite well. Rejoice, rejoice, Drongo players, for you are up. And I'm going to sit him promptly in the A tier. Next up in the A tier, a character that cannot be ignored, is going to be the Steel. Now, I might even go as far as moving Steel up in the pecking order a bit. Steel is just such a beast. He's great in support, he's good in the off lane, he's okay in the jungle, but really where you want him is that Steel support. He has not 1, not 2, but 3 stuns in his kit, as well as a knockback and a slow. That's right, folks, you heard it here first. 5 different CCs in his kit. And simply for that reason alone, he is A tier. He's hard to kill, he's hard to fight, he's hard to escape, and his ultimate in a team fight, if you hit a good 3-man, 4-man ultimate on Steel, you're probably just going to win that team fight. All in all, steel players, I find, are being an absolute menace in my games, and overall are a reliable pick. Next up in the A tier, I'm going to put the Richter. Now, say you like steel, right, but you hate that you don't really have any range. You're like, I wish I could just take that guy who's all the way over there and bring him right up close to me where I can punch him. That's where Richter comes in. Now, this all does, of course, rely on being able to hit your Richter hooks. If you can't hit a hook, you might be cooked. But even if you're hitting 1 out of 3 hooks, 1 out of 4 hooks, that's still an incredible amount of value you provide to your team. You hit an early game hook in the duo lane, and that person very well could be dead. He has great tankiness, great sustain with his health shield passive, good crowd control with his pull, his silence, his ult. He has semi-mobility with his movement speed electrocute, and all in all I find Richter to be an absolute menace. If you're hitting every hook, he's S tier. If you're missing every hook, he's lower down here. But if you're hitting like a couple of hooks every once in a while, I still find Richter to be a very strong pick, sitting him promptly in the A tier. Next up on the docket, I think we are going to put the Decker. Now, Decker does have an incredible value simply in the range of her stun. She can hit that stun from a mile away and absolutely catch someone lacking from downtown. I'm sure you all have been bullied by a Decker in the duo lane and see just the amount of power she can provide simply in her one ability being the stun. Don't even get me started on the cage. She can lock people down, trap them like a rat, stun them against the wall, and laser beam them right on the head. Decker is a great support, credible utility, good peel for their carry, like hey, Chimera comes busting in through the jungle and jumps on your carry, boom, hit him with a stun. What's that? He jumps on them again, boom, put him in a cage. Now you're watching him in the zoo as he mangles desperately at the bars of his cage, not able to escape. All in all, I find the Decker seems to be a reliable pick and provides a good amount of value to a team. And, oh, what's that? My friend Sanjay's calling. Let me see what he has to say. What up, pimp? You still trying to go on that hike today? My boy? Ooh, a rainy day. Alright, let me hit you up in a little bit, and maybe we can figure something out to do. Okay. Alright, I'll hit you up, pimp. See ya. We were trying to go on a fat, monstrous hike, but it seems as though it will be raining all day. So, allow me to get back to the tier list. I think this may just round out the A tier for me. Of very strong heroes, good all-around reliable picks. They do the trick, they don't really have any glaring weaknesses, or if they do, they just provide so much value on top of that it can't really be ignored. Next up on the tier list, I think we're going to start things off with the Grux in the B tier. Now, Grux was nerfed a smidge, but he is still a dominant force in the off lane. If you're not really feeling the Quang, may I recommend the Grux. Grux may in fact be the only character that can beat Quang in the off lane. But that being said, Grux has a few weaknesses, he can't really escape a gank too easily. He's kind of an all-in type character where you're going in and you're not really looking to get out. He has great damage, great sustain, a lane bully in the off lane. I'm sure all you off laners out there have been bullied by a Grux before, and can know just the pure power he provides in that role. Grux jungle is okay, it's not the best. Grux support I have seen do pretty well before. But all in all, if you're playing Grux, you really want to take him to the off lane. Our next character on the list is going to be the Crunch. Now, Crunch is an absolute beast if he gets ahead. If you give either of these characters a lead, they can kind of run away with the whole game. That being said, even just from being even, he's still a powerful machine in his own right. Having 2 dashes that go quite a respectable distance is something that every other character simply just does not have access to. The range at which you can start an engagement on Crunch is just simply astronomical. He has a slow, a knock-up, a stun, and 2 dashes. What more could you want? He's great in the jungle, he's good in the off lane. That's really all you'd want to play him in. But he does absolutely excel in both of those roles. All in all, Crunch is a great pick. A good, powerful jungler, and if you're looking to do some more combos, or you just want to hit someone with a fat, meaty uppercut, may I recommend Crunch. He's still very good, and I enjoy playing him a good bit. I've also found that Crunch is one of the few junglers that can really stick it to a Chimera. Chimera jumps on you, bing bang boom, uppercut, bang pow, Kimbo slice, karate chop, he's cooked. Crunch is all in all a beast, but I find that these two characters just can provide a little bit more value in the jungle, a little bit more reliably. That being said, Crunch is still a beast. They picked him up a lot in the Predecessor Pro Leagues, the PCC, saw a good bit of Crunch in there. He is a phenomenal character in his own right. Next up on the tier list, I think we are going to put the FaZe. Now, I'll admit, sleeping on the FaZe for a while now. I've been thinking to myself, as a jungler enjoyer, as a mid lane enthusiast, when I walk over to that duo lane, FaZe is kind of just a free kill a lot of the time. But that is through the scope of a mid laner or a jungler. Through the scope of a carry or support duo laner, FaZe is probably the most annoying character to go against. She can pull her carry to safety, she can poke you down from across the map with her laser beam, and the amount of healing and sustain she provides just makes her an absolute dominant force in the lane. FaZe players, I find, often are doing quite well, and FaZe can enable a lot of these lower ranked carries to really shine and pop off, giving them a solid footing in the game they're trying to play. A FaZe linked to a Sparrow, a Revenant, or a Grim or something can really just provide an incredible amount of damage output and give that character a little extra safety net that they would not have otherwise. FaZe, I've found, is a great support. Often, can kind of be beat out and bullied by some of these other big dogs, but she's definitely very annoying, and if you're not playing these characters well or perfectly, you're better off just picking FaZe. She's a nice, simple character, very effective. You don't have to think much. You just spam your laser beam, and whenever your carry is being a Dumbo, just pull him out and back to safety. Next up on the tier list, I think we are going to put the Greystone. Now, Greystone still can be an unstoppable monster, but I have found recently in my games, as I progressed through the ranks, I was a simple silver player for a while, but now I'm a humble gold 1, or gold 2 on a good day, and I find that the higher in rank you go, the less that Greystone is able to provide. He's a bit of a noob stomper, a bit of a simple one brain cell character, which in your lower ranked games is going to be S tier. But in your medium rank games, your average games, you're alright. You're not the best player, but you're not a bad player. Greystone is still a strong pick. He's good in the off lane, he's good in the jungle. Having a second life with his ultimate is still an incredible amount of value he brings, and being able to just jump on any carry and deflect their bullets and slow them and have no escape from you is still incredible value, and I find that I'm often not looking forward to having a Greystone jump on me. So that being said, Greystone is going to sit himself firmly in the B tier, which is still a very strong character. These are still above average, oftentimes stronger than most, and all in all, a very decent and good character. Next up, I think we're going to put the Murdoch. Now, Murdoch has fallen from grace for me a little bit. In a similar vein as the Greystone, I think the lower in rank you go, the better these characters are. But as you start to get up a little bit higher, you find that the Drongo and the Wraith just provide a little bit more value than the Murdoch does. That being said, he's still an exceptionally strong character, great in a 1v1, very hard to gank, probably the hardest carry to gank in my opinion. He's got his movement speed, his trap, and his buckshot. That's 3 ways out of a gank. And his ultimate, being able to snipe you across the map, is still just incredibly powerful. And all in all, we'll be cementing Murdoch, still in the upper echelon of characters, but I think does get beat out by the Drongo and the Wraith. Alright, next up on the tier list, I am going to put the Howitzer. I think Howitzer is a great, phenomenal mid laner, but the only thing that brings him down a little bit for me is I see much more consistency with the Gideon. I find that Gideon seems to always be doing well, whereas the Howitzer, you don't see them as much, they're a little more rare, and sometimes they can be struggling a little bit. He's definitely harder to play, but still provides incredible damage from a very far range. His ultimate is very good. His R2000 rocket hits like an absolute brick to the head. And he's mildly safe with his landmine and slow grenades. And ultimate, able to get him out of a pinch. All in all, Howitzer is still a great mid laner. Just gets a little outshined by the Gideon, the Argus, and the Bellica. But don't be afraid to pick Howitzer. He's a fun time, and still a very good mid laner. And I think last up in the B tier... Actually, next up in the B tier I think is going to be the Narbash. Now, I've, similar to FaZe, kind of been sleeping on the Narbash. I wasn't really viewing healing and sustain as valuable as just CC and death and damage. And I still don't, if I'm being honest, but I have seen the merit in it. As I play more and more duo lane, I come to find that the Narbash in the FaZe still are quite potent. And I may have been wrong before when I had Narbash lowly ranked, because he was nerfed recently, which means he has been performing very well. I think the higher in rank you go, the better Narbash gets, which makes sense why in my low-ranked games I kind of thought he was kind of bad. But as I rank up through the games, Narbash seems to be doing a bit better. He's got great healing to the whole team with his Song of My People. Giving everyone movement speed with his charge can be incredible in a skirmish. And the ults and his thunk still provide a good amount of CC if your team needs it. All in all, Narbash seems to be doing pretty well. Nothing spectacular, but still all in all a great pick. Can kind of be bullied in the duo lane at first, which does drop him down a little bit, but late game Narbash very well could be the best support. Last and least in the B tier, something that personally I still don't really believe in, but it seems as though he has everybody else fooled into thinking he's very good. That's going to be the Twin Blast. Now personally, I still to this day have never really been scared of a Twin Blast, but I have seen the value he provides in his mobility, in his little dashing around, and kind of being hard to lock down. The biggest weakness to most of the carries is that you can kind of lock them down and blow them up. But Twin Blast is a little more nimble, a little more fancy on his feet, and I find that can provide some good value. Now, am I still not scared of a Twin Blast ever? Yes. If I wasn't taking into account all the other tier lists I've seen, the competitive scene, the PCC, I'd probably put Twin Blast down here in my own personal opinion of the mid to low ranked games. Still just not really seeing Twin Blast pop off, but because of what I have seen him capable of, I still think I'll be nice to all the Twin Blast lovers out there and put him just at the end of the B tier. Do still think he's a top 50% carry. I'm still just not really scared of him though, if I'm being honest. But all in all, he's alright. He's pretty good. He's got fancy feet, good poke, and he does the trick. Alright, next up we're going to be getting to the C tier. Characters that are fine. They can do really well, but they can also do pretty bad. And I think we're going to start the C tier off with the Countess. C for Countess. Now, Countess is a curious case because I've seen a lot of Countesses do very bad, but I've also seen some Countesses do quite well. So for that, she's kind of just in the middle for me. Not great, not bad, just kind of fine. A Countess with a lead, don't get me wrong, is very scary, and can absolutely burst you down and one-shot you late game. But she's kind of easy to bully in the mid lane. Countess jungle I'm not really scared of for the first 10 or 15 minutes. You kind of just get a free laning phase if you're against Countess in the early game. And that's going to kind of bring her down a peg. Sure, she can one-shot you late game if she has a lead, but all in all, I find that Countess is kind of, whatever in my eyes. And so that's going to cement her firmly in the C tier. Next up in the C tier, I think we're going to put the Kira. Now, I have seen Kira's do well. I've also seen Kira's do not so well. I think she's kind of just an average performing carry, kind of gets outshined by these other picks, but still can clap in her own right. She kind of struggles in early game wave clear, but in a 1v1 her damage can really ramp up, and she can catch a lot of people lacking. Kira is all in all a fine pick. She does have a dash, a little bit of safety. She's kind of like jack of all trades, master of none, where she can do everything alright, but she doesn't really excel at any one thing. And I think, honestly, that might round off the C tier. C tier looking a bit thin. But if I'm being completely frank, I think I'm putting Twin Blast down here. Hate me down in the comments, I know you will. Comment down below why Twin Blast is OP. But in my average games, my gold games, just your regular Joe's games, where the bulk of the player base will be, what most people will find, and just kind of the average player experience, just not seeing Twin Blast do that good, and I'm going to slap him down here in the C tier. I know in the higher ranks he's a top 3 carry, but in my eyes he's more like a middle of the road carry, where I'm just never really scared of a Twin Blast. A Wraith or a Drongo, they can just pop you real hard and just catch you lacking and really blow you up. Twin Blast is more of a whittler, of tickle you down, and just simply not that scary to me. I don't know, I could be wrong, maybe I just haven't played against the good Twin Blasts, because they're not in the gold rank. A good Twin Blast is probably much higher. So I think that will about fill out the C tier for me. Which is going to bring us down to the D tier. And I'm going to start things off in the D tier with the Sevarog. Now, Sevarog can provide an incredible value to his team in the late game, but I've seen too many Sevarogs just fall behind, get bullied in the lane, get bullied in the jungle. He's really not that scary early on, and he takes a little more effort, a little more brain power, and a little more prowess to pull off a Sevarog when compared to some of these other picks. Kind of seems like Sevarog just does what Quang wants to do, but just a little bit worse and a little bit harder to get it done. You've got to micromanage your stacks, which a lot of your average ranked 1 brain cell predecessor players, myself included, just aren't really able to do at a level of which he needs in order to be of the same viability as these other characters. And I tend to find Sevarog not doing all that great in my games. When he does do well, you know, you're like, dang, Sevarog kind of OP, like, is this character actually good? But then you see the Sevarog who's 0-3, kind of struggling, and you're like, he's really not that good. And next up, I think this looks like a good spot for the Iggian Scorch, so I will leave him here. And next on the docket, I'm going to put the Feng Mao. Now, a lot of people, similar to Twin Blast, think that Feng Mao is really good, but me, myself, in the average games, from the eyes of just an average, regular player, nothing fancy, nothing crazy, just like who you're most likely to be if you're watching this video, of just an average Joe player. I'm not seeing Feng Mao do that great. Seems like he just sucks as a jungler. He gets outclassed in the off lane by all these other good offlaners. And I'm just never really too scared of a Feng Mao, if I'm being honest. I can be playing Grim in the mid lane and Feng Mao pulls up on me, and I'm not really scared at all. I'll take that fight and usually win. The Feng Mao just doesn't seem like he has enough damage to be an assassin. He doesn't have enough survivability to be a offlaner bruiser. He gets like a little wimpy measly shield when compared to like Quang's big beefy burly shield. And I don't know, I'm just not really that scared of a Feng Mao ever. I'm sure in your top ranked games, Twin Blast and Feng Mao are excelling, but down here in the average Joe's games, in the real world if you will, you know, get out of your make-believe cloud where you live, where the Twin Blast and the Feng Mao are good, and come back to Earth, and realize that they're really not that great in your average Joe's games. And that's going to plant him firmly down here in the D tier. Next up in the D tier, we're going to put the Muriel. Now, we are kind of in a CC stun lock meta in Predecessor. If you take a look at the top picks, they all have some sort of incredible crowd control that can just lock you down, and even here in the A tier, they still all have some sort of incredible crowd control that just ruins your day and makes it so you can't play the game. Muriel does not provide that at all. What she instead provides is global rotations, slows, and shields, which can be a lot harder to pull off in your average Joe's ranked game. Kind of in a similar vein as the Twin Blast or the Feng Mao, you gotta have a little more skill to pull this character off, and I tend to just see them getting outclassed by the Deckers, by the Bellicas, the Arguses, the Steels, and the Richters. And for that, she kind of drops down to the D tier for me. I'm just not seeing Muriel do all that well. Sure, if you're a specialist one trick, these characters are great, but if you're just an average Joe, with a couple games played on all the characters, she kind of just is underwhelming. And I think next up in the D tier is going to be the Kallari. Now, I may have been lying to myself before when I said that, you know, a good Kallari can really dominate a game, and that still is true, but I have never actually seen a good Kallari. They are kind of all bad Kallaris, and I think that just might mean that Kallari herself is just bad. Now, why is Kallari bad, you may be asking? Well, she really struggles to clear the jungle camps early. Her early ganks, you often see the Kallari coming to your lane with like half health or lower, and oftentimes when Kallari comes over for a gank, she just dies herself. She takes a little too much skill and prowess to be able to pull off. Whereas Chimera, you put a monkey on a typewriter on Chimera, he's gonna win the jungle. Whereas Kallari, you kind of have to be your Aristotle philosopher, big brain thinker type, which a lot of your average predecessor players simply are not. And all in all, I just have not been seeing these characters do very well in the grand scheme of things. But a character that I've kind of been sleeping on a little bit might be the Sparrow. I'm going to actually move Sparrow up out of the F tier and into the D tier, simply because I played a game where a Sparrow won the entire game by herself, killed our whole team 1v5, took the inhibitor, took the core, and did it all her own. No phase support, no help from her team, simply just killed us all by herself. And that is something I have to recognize. If I'm being honest, I think I'm more scared of a Sparrow than I am a Twin Blast. If I'm being completely frank. So, Twin Blast players are going to absolutely hate me for this, but I'm moving him down below the Sparrow in the D tier. If I'm just being true to myself, I am more scared of a Sparrow than I am a Twin Blast. That being said, Sparrow early game is still a free gank, a free kill. You can kind of trounce all over her. But a late game Sparrow is such a threat, where a late game Twin Blast is like, whatever, I'm not scared of this guy. He's kind of just like that dude who's just like there in the background. He's like a background character, an NPC, if you will. Whereas the Sparrow late game kind of turns into that main character. She's him in the late game, and she'll melt down any character. You can be the tankiest Rampage, jumping in with your ult, that Sparrow's still gonna hurt. But that being said, she is still gonna be down in the D tier for me. Which brings us now to the F tier. Top of F tier, I am going to put the Shinbi. I was tempted to almost put her in the D tier because she is good at split pushing, but I find that Shinbi just doesn't really have what it takes to be a good character. I find that she often gets beat in the solo lane, and if you have a Shinbi jungle, you're just guaranteed going to lose that game. I've literally lost every game I've had a Shinbi jungle, which is just makes me have to put her in F tier. I'm not usually that scared of a Shinbi unless she's just absolutely cracked and fed out of her mind. Then sure, these characters can be scary, but all in all, on average, in just your regular Joe's average, middle of the road game, Shinbi kind of blows. Next character that kind of blows is going to be the Gadget. Now I think Gadget is better than the Morigesh and the Fae, but if I'm being honest, Gadget most of the time is kind of just a free kill who wants to just run away and be a coward. Her ult is fine, her sticky bomb is whatever, her little root gate thing is, it's alright, but all in all, I'm just not seeing the Gadget do that great, often getting outclassed in the mid lane by these other characters. Not really too scared of a Gadget ever, and if I'm playing jungle, Gadget is oftentimes a free kill. And last up in the F tier, we're going to put the Sereth. Now, why is Sereth so bad? As a new player, you might get clacked by Sereth and fall under a false sense of value. But all in all, she just kind of sucks. Her early game jungle clear is horrible. Her early ganks are not that great. She just doesn't have the damage I feel like she should have. Like, it seems like she does less damage than a Chimera does. And her whole thing is like doing damage and ganking, but I don't know. I've seen Sereths often fall behind, often get outshined by other junglers, and really just not provide to her team the value that these other junglers provide. Now, this tier list looks pretty good to me. I'm going to get a lot of hate from the Twin Blast enthusiasts, so, for you guys, I'll put them up here. This is what the tier list, should look like if I was trying to be politically correct. If I was trying to, go with the flow and please everyone and go with, what most people consider the meta to be. But in the average ranked games, Twin Blast kind of just blows, if I'm being honest. I'm just not seeing it. I don't know. Comment down below if you're a Twin Blast enthusiast, but kind of just been seeing him not do great, and I'm never really scared of a Twin Blast. I think this is the tier list. Maybe we can do a bit of organizing here, maybe move Richter up a little bit. This looks pretty good to me. This all checks out. Yeah, I think this is going to be the tier list. This is just your average Joe's tier list. Nothing fancy. Just an honest look at your average player's game. You, the viewer, are most likely an average player, just simply according to the data. Now, being called average sounds like an insult these days. You call someone average and they take offense to that. But there's no shame in being average. You are the majority. You are what most people are, and I myself am right there with you. This has been my view, a personal inner look in the mind of a gold player, in the average game, in your average experience. Your top-ranked, high-ranking, highfalutin players are going to say, "Oh, Twin Blast is S tier, he's the best." But down here in your regular Joe's games, in the real world, I find Twin Blast to be less scary than a Sparrow, which is a huge insult. And Twin Blast players, I hope you take that to heart and comment down below your thoughts on the tier list. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Hopefully you can see some merit in my picks. You can understand the Bellica being good, the Sereths and the Morgeshes being bad, and hopefully my reasoning on Twin Blast you at least can understand if you don't agree with it. Thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next episode.